Point number 2, it says Rutherford was under a doctor's treatment in San Diego, and this doctor told him to spend as much time as possible there in San Diego or in Southern California because the climate would be better for his health. And we see this also mentioned in the J.W. Messenger paper, 1931. And I think this is why the Proclaimers book is saying what they're saying, because this J.W. Messenger says anyone can be a Christian in peacetime, but Judge Rutherford was one of the wartime Christians, and for daring so to be, went to Atlanta Penitentiary under 4 sentences of 20 years each. When he emerged, he was in poor physical condition, and even now has the use of but one lung. Since his return from Atlanta, prudence and good common sense dictated that, working as hard as he constantly works, he should have the benefit of the most equitable winter climate to be found. It is a matter of common knowledge among meteorologists, weather experts, that San Diego, California is as near perfect for winter climate as it is possible to get. About 250,000 people besides meteorologists have made the same discovery and make their city their winter home. For years after he emerged from prison, Judge Rutherford went to San Diego to work during the winter months, renting such quarters as could be secured. His physician, Dr. A.G. Eckles of San Diego, urged him to make the city his permanent winter home. And in the latter part of the year 1929, some brethren, out of their own personal funds, arranged for the erection of Beth-Sarim, the House of Princes, of which several illustrations appear in this issue. So this messenger, again, ties in his sickness with his prison experience. But as we saw earlier, that's a little bit of a stretch. He was sick a full 2 months after he got out of prison. So why they're linking it, I guess to gather sympathy, I don't know.
Or they had a plan, and they were slowly introducing reasons, logic, implications, like this one. Meteorologists, they're telling you, experts, meteorologists are saying San Diego is the best place. So that's like, a little putting it in your head first and then later doing it once it's already been established is not a shock. So I'm going to add that little point here in there for that in this discussion that maybe we'll cover again later.
Right. And it says here that his physician's name, we now know the name, was Dr. A.G. Eckles of San Diego. This gives us a data point that we can search now. And in searching this doctor, we found some interesting things. R.J. Martin writes in the Golden Age, which is now the Wake magazine, the truth about the San Diego house. And in it, he makes the same statement that Dr. Eckles has repeatedly urged him to spend as much time as possible in San Diego. So we know the doctor's name. We now have a data point to search.
And it's also noted in the Golden Age, which was a publication by the society itself. And getting back to my earlier point about setting the stage of things, the Awake or the Golden Age said it first, and then a yearish later, whatever that, how much time went by, now the private Jehovah's Witnesses groups are making the same statement that the Golden Age said. So I'm going to stick with my earlier reasoning of my comment on setting the stage for things. Because that wasn't, Beth-Sarim was not a small decision. When you make a decision to take your president of your corporation and build him a mansion in California in 1931, that was Depression era period. I mean, this is a big thing.
Yeah, a lot of the people were starving at the time, and unfortunately, Rutherford, as we can see, was living in luxury. I mean, look at this house. It's a very beautiful home. We'll get into the details of its building here shortly, but this J.W. Messenger was a Watchtower publication. It was kind of like Our Christian Life and Ministry. We have a picture of Dr. Eckles, who was one in charge of the convention hospital, and they also worked with the Red Cross. But I find it interesting they're working with the Red Cross, which they wouldn't do today. Mm-hmm. Just that was interesting. And And we also know from the New Era Enterprise, the June 24th issue, 1924, it says that Dr. Eckles was a Bible student. And we can see that because he's working here at the convention hospital. It says he's an elder of the San Diego class. So Dr. Eckles was more than a doctor. He was Rutherford's friend. And he actually lived in San Diego and wanted Rutherford to move where he lived.
And again, once again, you get in tight with somebody like Rutherford, you were kind of golden. And we had that, we talked about this in our other discussions on it's not just money oriented in a like in a private corporation. There's clout and there's fringe benefits that go along with being a personal physician to Judge Rutherford. So there's a lot that we're going to cover here in a few minutes that will be very interesting as we tie it in.
The question is, what kind of physician was he? Now that we have his name and some data points to check, we can actually look for that information. Back in the day, they would have these city directories that would list the people's names and their addresses. It would be like the white pages or the yellow pages kind of mixed in one. And we could see in the business area at the top, we could see Dr. Eckles. And it says he and his son are chiropractors. So Dr. Eckles was a chiropractor. He wasn't quite a physician.
Now, for the record, a chiropractor can be a chiropractor physician, but usually they're very eager and to point out, I'm not a chiropractor, I'm a chiropractor physician, just to put that, because it's an additional education and experience and title to do that. So with that said, if he were a physician, that would have been included in this.
Well, let's see what the state of California said about that. We actually have some very interesting things about that we're going to look at here in just a moment. The two Eckles, father and son, they're both listed as chiropractors in San Diego in 1920. Albert was a registered voter. Then, of course, it was a conscience matter. We discussed that in our neutrality discussion, if you haven't seen that. He was registered as a Democrat in 1926, 1928, and 1936.
Yeah, I thought you couldn't do that.
There was a conscience matter at the time, so. And he was Rutherford's friend, so he could do that, right? We have his date of his death here. The son died in 1940. He died pretty young. Born in 1904 and died in 1940. We'll get into the first wife here in a moment. His second wife died in 1957, and she was pretty young. She was born in 1924, so there was quite an age gap, 20-year age gap between them.
And she died young herself.
Yeah.
33 years old?
Yeah, I was literally getting depressed looking up this family and seeing the tragedy that the family was experiencing. It just got disheartening. It really broke my heart just seeing the tragedy that they were going through. During the Spanish influenza outbreak, Sister Eckles, and that's her picture down below, died. He sadly lost his wife to pneumonia. This is reported in the November 5th, 1918 St. Paul Enterprise. There's a couple letters that she wrote that appeared in the 1915 issues of the St. Paul Enterprise. It didn't take him long. Dr. Eckles married again just a little over a year and a half later on May 3rd, 1920. So, a very sad part of their history. Remember that we discussed the Watchtower and pandemics, and we talk a lot about how it affected the Watchtower subscribers and the Watchtower itself back during the First World War. Alta Graham Eckles, the father, he was a war veteran of the Spanish-American War, and he died in 1954 in San Diego. He enlisted on August 5th, 1899, and was discharged on May 8th, 1901. But the Spanish-American War dates are from April to December 1898. So he just missed the war, just by that much. And that's his grave there. This is the deed for the Beth-Sarim property and the building of it. Dr. Eckles purchased the land which Beth-Sarim was built on. And him and the other contributor bought the most expensive and best architect of the time period. They didn't spare any expense. They wanted the best of the best. So according to the state of California historical records here, it says Robert J. Martin of 117 Adams Street, Brooklyn, New York, affiliated with the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society and the Jehovah's Witnesses, he purchased the property from Albert Eckles on October 8th, 1929. So Eckles purchased it. Martin purchased it from him. The deed continues, or the historical record continues. It says, on October 10th, 1929, he entered into a contract with a construction company for the design and construction of this large, 2-story, Spanish eclectic 10-room mansion with the symbolic watchtower above. The deed was conveyed on December 24th to Joseph Rutherford, head of the Jehovah's Witnesses religion, for and during his life on earth, and thereafter to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society Corporation. The photo in the picture is the designer. His name is William F. Gernhardt, and a lot of their houses are historical landmarks now because of the style that he was building.
So that, again, that didn't come cheap, just the design.
Right.
You can hire box architects to just basically make squares, or you can hire someone to put effort in design, and the more it's like an artist, the more popular you are, the more your fees become. So as you said earlier, Jeff, no expense was spared to do this.
Our family has a farm, and the farmhouse that was on the property for years was one of those old Sears catalog houses.
Cool.
Basically looked in the catalog, decided that's the house you wanted, and they brought it pre-constructed, and they assembled it, very, very rapidly, very quickly. So, they could have done it on the cheap, but they chose to get the best of the best. In the October 13th, 1925 New Era Enterprise, Mr. Eckles is described as living in San Diego, and he's giving a talk at a convention. So he's now moved his way up. He's doing more than just hospitals. He's actually giving lectures at the various conventions.
And like today, with modern Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't let just anyone give up. They'll let anyone go on their platform at a Kingdom Hall and give a little talk, but they don't let just anyone give a sermon or a talk at a convention. So, like you said, he was obviously tied in pretty deeply, being an elder, personal physician, giving talks at conventions, and so he was somebody in the organization.
Yeah, Rutherford had his finger on the conventions on a lot of things. So he had his pick and choose of who was going to lecture at those conventions. And Dr. Eckles, his friend, is lecturing for him. So exactly as we should expect with the history as we know it. In the Tuesday, April 4th, 1922, New Era Enterprise, Dr. Eckles is described as a vertebraist. Why was he described this way and not as a chiropractor? Well, the October 18th, 1921 Enterprise gives us a little more of the story. It says, Brother Eckles, who spent 60 days in jail, is practicing again. Indeed, we are getting some hard usage from him. He says the more he loves you, the harder he hits. California law is surely narrow when it comes to healthology, unless it happens to be some fake miracle healer. These pass by with a salute of religion. As elsewhere, Bible students are a mark for the missiles of the King of Tartarus. We know of no place where infirmities will receive such gentle treatment as in this birthplace of California. He might tell you a whole lot of things which would interest the friends, but more again, all you need is an auto and a camp outfit to exist anywhere in the state. The roads are smooth everywhere, and we saw some of them being built in that footage from Imperial Valley, California, back in our first trumpet blast discussion. And the second clipping, this is from the Golden Age, and it now gives us details why he went to prison. He was fined by the Medical Board of California and made him pay a fine because we're getting too much business away from the medical doctors.
Now, I'll come to his defense a little bit on that, to not totally, discredit him. We'll give him a fair shot. You could see medical doctors getting angry if business is taken away. But was he taking that much away that they were going to single him out? That's another, the other speculation of that. And usually full board doctors won't go after other full board doctors. It's very unprofessional. So there had to be something else going on there, in my opinion. You very rarely will a lawyer follow a bar charge against another attorney unless it's really something or lots of money involved for them. So for this to happen, I'm questioning that statement. Usually, why would a chiropractor be taking away from a physician's salary and money anyway? Most people go to a chiropractor to get their bones adjusted, not for other issues, not for diet, nutrition. So there's probably more to it.
And he's basically practicing without a license. That's another reason. So he gets fined for it. He refuses to pay the fine, and he spends 60 days in jail just because of his pride, his ego, I guess you could say.
Now, was there a license that he could have activated?
Possibly, but it's a very good.
Because now here again, the investigation continues. Knowing Rutherford, based on everything what happened, he probably would have paid it for him to make the whole system look good and to make it come out better. There's a lot of stuff in here showing that he was practicing without a license, which it was probably easier back then to do. Like the judge himself, he had a few cases that he did as a lawyer, and then he served on a panel as a judge, and now he's nicknamed the judge, and he's a judge. Well, was he really a judge?
It's still illegal. He's practicing without a license.
Mm-hmm.
Offers a penalty for it. So
Mm-hmm.
the state of California considered him a quack,
Mm-hmm.
literally a medical quack. So,
But the society said otherwise. So,
but they had a lot of interesting medical suggestions in those early magazines,
mm-hmm.
which are very laughable today.
Oh,
And
it went actually. A lot of it went on well into the 80s.
yeah,
With a lot of really interesting stuff. It continues today with blood transfusions, but it long after these articles, if you had an organ transplant, you were a cannibal. So the society does have a history of their own version of medicine, to say the least.
Beth-Sarim was built with funds that were a direct contribution for that purpose. So let's follow the money. Where did the money come from?